see my screen? I just activated it, I think.
Got it.
Yay.
We're good.
Awesome. Yeah, race cars. You guys see race cars? It's kind of funny because I'm not really much of a racing fan, but I just love this analogy about what to do as you're trying to manage your business through a downturn. I stumbled across this really by reading some quotes from some drivers in NASCAR, and some of the things they were saying said that's really kind of how we need to think about driving our businesses in a downturn. So I've been using that analogy for the last few months, and it's really been helping companies a lot. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm the executive director the global executive director for CINA, Strategy and Action. And we have offices in Montreal and in Atlanta. I have a remote office, even though I'm running the U.S. operation in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm so excited to be with you today and talk about something I wish I could be talking to you about: driving your business through a booming economy where everybody's throwing money at you. That would be a better headline, but we have to deal with the reality that's being served up, and that's really what we have to do now. So I'm hoping that that some of the research that I have compiled and put together and some of my personal experiences will help you get some ideas, because every business is going to have unique and distinct things that you could do. I'm hoping to give you a framework on how to actually think about what your options are. And if that's the case, then I think we'll have a successful time together. But first of all, I just got to talk a little bit about COVID. The reason why I mentioned this in this way is that COVID is not like any other recession we've ever seen before. So some of the things that we have learned about it is that, this has not been caused by some kind of economic shock, like a drop in the, like a rise in oil prices or something of that nature that's caused a recession to kind of occur because the price of energy has gotten so high. It's not a financial panic like the 1929, Great Depression. And it's also not a shift in economic expectation where people just don't feel like things are working out for them, and they start like the freeze that Japan went in the 90s. This really is, everyone's still kind of optimistic about the future of business overall. I mean, just look at the stock market. I mean, with all the news about the pandemic, the stock market in the U.S. has been rather oddly active. And so it shows you that we have an intentional global recession that's going on. This is kind of a unique thing for us, but we're finding out that some of the same strategies of the past are helping companies right today. And I wanted to share that with you, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas. I love this quote from Robert Kennedy. It really means a lot to me today because of what we're facing. But he said, "Like it or not, we live in interesting times. There are times of danger and uncertainty, but they're also more open to the creative energy of men than any other time in history." And if we look at our time as being just a place of fear, it's going to be really tough for us. And if we actually manage our businesses from a standpoint of fear, we're going to find ourselves doing some things that are probably going to harm our businesses long term. And so some of our natural responses to be fearful actually can create problems for us when we manage our business. It's the old adage, is the cup half full or half empty? I'm going to encourage you to look at what we're facing today as a half full situation, not because I'm a Pollyanna, but it's the only way to really manage the business. And if you go into a half empty mindset where you just think everything is just falling apart, then you'll make some decisions that will hurt your business when the recession ends and the economy starts to spin up again. And so we have to be prepared. We have to be thinking ahead for our businesses. And I love this quote. This is actually from Colin McRae, one of the famous racers from the UK. He said this: "Straight roads are for fast cars, turns are for fast drivers." And so we're in a downturn. So this is our chance as managers, as leaders, to be able to step in and say, this is my best time to shine as a creative thinker, as a leader, show off my business acumen. If you look at it this way, I think you're going to find that the recession is not something to fear, but to actually to grab a hold of and treat as an opportunity. And I'm hoping as we walk out, finish up our conversation today, you're going to feel that way, because it is a corrective to our natural feelings, because we just want to hole up and just hope it just goes away fast and I don't have to do any more work. But if you think of recession as a wonderful time to show off your business chops, then a recession is really something where you're going to make the best headway. We have two anxieties. You guys feel this, I know, if you have any, if you've been paying attention at all, is that how much worse will things become? Will we go into a second dip? Will this first one continue to go up again? I mean, the last 2 days have kind of shocked me. We see all the hospitalizations rising and the cases rising to levels that we weren't expecting. We thought we'd be on the downside of things today in the United States, but we're not. How long will this last? Will we be out of it by the fall, or we're going to double dip and actually see it go into the spring, winter and spring of next year? These things make us very anxious, and we have this incredible, compelling notion that I've got to do something, and so the pressure is on. And so sometimes we actually go and become very rash in what we do. We just start cutting, just to make sure we protect cash. Or we make even modest things or we take the opposite opinion and just do modest stuff. We just try to do what the absolute minimum and just hoping that thing will be a shallow recession. And so we make those kinds of choices, but I think we need to be a little more strategic than that. And so David Rhodes, who's he wrote a wonderful article in the Harvard Business Review, and I'm stealing some of his research. He said this: inaction is the riskiest response to the uncertainties of an economic crisis. The worst thing you can do is just sit tight. And I know that sometimes it feels like that may be the most logical way, or at least the most comforting way to move forward. But really, I think David is correct in saying this is the time for action, and uncertainty at this point is actually is going to push us forward as to take action. But what action should we take? So I've broken up my conversation with you today in 3 areas. And it sounds like I'm a lawyer. You try to make a big point for the jury. You need to strategize, stabilize, and capitalize. And I hope that doesn't sound too corny for you guys, but it helped me a lot. And so, and it really takes this, and you'll see why I think all 3 of these mental steps are going to be really important. On the strategize side, this is actually based upon a research, a 3 recession research undertaking at the Harvard Business School. They researched 4,700 public companies over those 3 recessions, and they found out in their research there are really 4 types of responses that companies take during recessions. And you may find yourself be easily understood in one of these 4. The first one has actually become very prevention focused. I'm just going to defensive. I'm just going to batten down the hatches. I'm going to cut costs. I'm going to sit back and wait for the markets to start to rise again. You're more concerned than peers about avoiding losses and limiting risks. You cut out everything that has any riskiness to it. You freeze everything across the board, and you just batten down the hatches. That's prevention focused. Promotion focus is that, hey, everybody's shutting down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to step up and I'm going to do something bold. I'm going to actually go on the offensive. I'm going to don't worry so much about decreasing spending, but I'm going to invest and push and push and push during the recession. Third one is kind of pragmatic. I'll just do kind of a little bit of both. I'll cut as many expenses as I can. I'll reduce my head count, but I will increase my marketing, my SG&A. I will do some research and development. I may even do some purchasing of equipment because maybe I can get better prices on it right now, do some capital investment. That's the pragmatic approach. Then the progressive approach is where I say, okay, I'm going to look at everything in my business, what's really making money. I'm going to try to shave my costs of goods sold way down, squeeze out all inefficiencies, and then I'm going to focus on very strategic SG&A or promotion, selling general and administrative expenses, and research and development. Or I'm going to go into some CapEx and property, plant, and equipment, asset-related purchases to help grow my business. So this research broke businesses into these 4 categories. And what they found out is this. First of all, that during any recession, they found out that 9% of companies come out stronger than ever. They don't just return to their market position, they come out ahead. And that's only 9%, it means 91% do not. And he says that the probability of pulling out ahead of your competition by 10% or more, you can see the percentages below of which of these actually work best. If you're preventative, you actually have a less chance of pulling out ahead. but some do. 1 out of every 5 do, but 4 out of 5 actually do not. Promotion focuses on a quarter, basically, are doing much better than their competition. But 7 out of 10 do not. 75% do not. And pragmatic, and you see the progressive. The progressive seems to do the best. And we're going to break this down just a little bit in more detail for you to understand it. But this is important for us to understand. My natural tendency is prevention focus. Let's just lock things down. And I know a lot of people say, let's go out there and take advantage of the moment when like, go advertise, because the advertising spend is so cheap compared to what it is in a booming economy. Get your share of voice up, do some things, do something aggressive. And that's actually, we see that only 26% are successful. The progressive side is one that's really doing a much better job. And so let's find out what all this is about. Any questions so far? Is this making sense? Okay. All right, let's go a little deeper into some of the research. First of all, this is when you break down, whether you're doing prevention-focused moves, which is all the rows, are promotion-focused moves. Those are the columns. I try to color code them so it'll be very easy to read. But the ones that do good or best, you see that when you really focus on getting your operation really efficient, you see that that's your best outcome. If you're also looking at promotion-focused moves, that's your outcome. That's a really good outcome as well. You'll notice, though, that employee reduction is really, it has a lot of times we think that's one of the best ways to shave our costs. But according to the research, the people who did a really active job of that, only a few, and the ones that did market development with it, actually did okay. The rest of them actually saw a major dip. And you see that even in the worst, where you try to do both asset and market, actually made you worse off if you tried to also reduce your employee account. This is counterintuitive. I think that you'll find out most of the people in your industry or even your own business, they went ahead and said, let's just cut, and let's cut people. Let's get the payroll costs down. And what this research is telling us, that may not be the best possible strategy. So hold on tight to that information. We're going to build on that when we look at a little bit of information from a different point of view. Does that make sense so far? That is, I know it's kind of shocking for many of us. It makes us feel like, whoa, I've been thinking about this wrong. When I saw this information, I really challenged it. And but seeing what they're talking about, it makes a lot of sense now, because employee reduction is a very, very difficult thing to rebuild post-recession. You lose a lot of people, and it's hard to put the right people back in place. Let's go a little deeper. Here's going back to the 4 different strategies. You'll see this is post-recession performance measures. And so you'll see in this study that the progressives actually had the highest levels of both sales growth and EBITDA growth. And if EBITDA is not a term you're familiar with, if you're not like a financial geek like I am, it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It is a special measurement off of the income statement that tells us how well the operations of the business is doing. And if you are in finance or in accounting, you probably have recognized that term before. But it's a really important measure to how good your operation's running. And you'll see that the EBITDA for the progressive and pragmatic are pretty good, but the progressive is really strong. And that's exactly what we want to figure out. So let's talk a little bit more about the progressive. What you're doing there is you're trying to find the strategy for a progressive thinker, a recession manager, is that you try to look at your costs of goods sold, and try to say, what can I drive more efficiently? Can I build technology? Can I do more, more robotic RPA kinds of things? Can I take some things and actually reduce the cost of actually processing an order? A lot of people actually squeeze a lot of costs on just the maintenance of their accounts during a recession. And if you think about that, that's very healthy thinking. Instead of just cutting positions and just cutting and just limit and just capping off spending, but looking at, say, how can we make everything we do more efficient and really work hard on that during the recession? Those are the progressives. It's hard work. Let me tell you, it's not easy to be a progressive thinker when it comes to a recession, but they're the ones that really come out ahead. And we're going to build off of that a little bit more. Any questions so far? I don't want to go too hard and too fast. Is this making sense? Yep. Okay. So, okay, good. All right. Here's one thing that you all always should keep in mind. This should be something you do every day, but in a recession, it's easy to lose sight of your customer. You get so worried about your own problems, you forget to talk with them. But stay closer to your customers than you've ever done before. You should be on the phone with them more, setting up Zoom calls or whatever you need to do, and just be in front of them and start asking them questions. Many of the things that they are saying to you will help you forecast your business, because probably a lot of the demand for your products and services are being driven by the demand of your customers' products and services. So the more that you get to know them and figure out ways to help them through the process. I was talking, before I made this presentation, I made it a point to talk to about 20 people that I respected in the industry. And I asked them all kinds of questions about what they were doing during the COVID crisis. And so they were telling me, straight up, it says, it's amazing how much our customers have informed our strategy. And they have worked very hard on keeping in touch with their customers. And you should not make a decision not just based upon what it does for your cash balance, but what it does to help you meet the customer needs. That's more strategic. And one way to actually do this is through what I call customer empathy mapping. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that term before, but Google that when you get a chance after this, where you can actually sit down and really make sure you fully understand the realities your customer is facing. And that's a design thinking technique. If you ever have done any kind of design thinking of your own or been around it any, but customer empathy mapping is a great way to really step into their world and get them to help you understand what really is important to them. You'll find out that there are many opportunities for you to be able to carve your business up into more meaningful chunks to be able to make decisions. I love this quote. I had to put it in here. I get for my son's sake. He's a big Jeremy Clarkson fan at Top Gear. It says, speed has never killed anyone. Suddenly becoming stationary, that's what gets you. Yeah, that's a great line. So anyhow, I don't know if you guys ever watch Top Gear. Are there any Top Gear aficionados out there? Oh, it's a fun show. It's a British show about cars. And so if you ever want to have some fun, watch Top Gear. Jeremy Clarkson, you'll recognize him immediately when you watch it. But really a lot of fun. All right. Well, that's basing strategy. And we become much more of a progressive thinker, learning to cut where you really can. Let's talk a little about stabilizing the business during a downturn. And I think probably many of you have kind of figured this out just by hook and by crook, but I want to give you kind of an overall scenario of how to think about it in case you're still facing this, in case we still have to deal with the recession for a longer period of time. As you know, liquidity is everything. Cash has got to be your primary concern across the board. Yes, it'd be nice to keep our balance sheets really nice and clean, and that would be wonderful. But at any point, you just can't run out of cash. And you got to figure out what you can do to get as much cash into your business as you can. That's hard. That's hard to do, especially when the top line, the sales revenue side is being challenged and taxed so heavily right now during the COVID crisis that liquidity is tough. But here's what I recommend to you is that you should set up a minimum of 3 scenarios of your business so that you can see what to do. Pardon me. You need to look at a modest downturn. I don't know what your downturn is. If you're in retail sales, these numbers may be way too low. If you are in in healthcare, of course, these aren't really issues at all. But you should set 3 scenarios: a modest downturn, a severe downturn, and a worst case scenario downturn. And you do financial forecasting. What if my sales drop by 10%? How am I going to make sure I still have cash? What if and that's in a modest, you may put 15, maybe about 25, you may put only 3%. I don't know what your reality is in your industry. That's why you should base it on your specific industry. And the severe one, you actually look a little bit deeper, or almost like double or triple the modest, where if we really go into a real deep recession, what will happen if I lost 20% of my revenue? What am I going to do to get the costs in line in order so that I have cash at the end of the day? And then the worst case scenario is when the wheels come off on the economy completely. What am I going to do? And that would be if we were facing a depression. And you just look at it and say, what will happen? What will I ultimately do in order for me to have a positive cash balance at a 50% scenario? Has anybody done anything like this before?
Yeah,
Let
and
me
if
tell you
you
why.
could put in the chat box if y'all want to say yes or no, or you're more than welcome to kind of chat through it, and we can read through some of those.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's really neat about this exercise, and if you're not an accountant, you probably look at that and say, that's the last thing in the world I ever want to do. I'd rather just quit and just go start selling, open a bait shop, at a local lake, because I don't want to deal with this kind of reality. But if you do this exercise, you're going to find out what's most important in your business. When you go to the severe downturn and do the scenario, and you got to get a positive cash balance when you say, here's my revenue, what are my expenses going to look like? What's my cash balance at the end of that? And you look at that, you're going to cut, and you're going to decide, I need to cut this, 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 and this. And you do the worst case scenario, you can do the same thing. You'll find out it will give you opportunities to really focus what is really most important in your business. And you keep that out there in case the severe downturn does happen. You pull that out and say, okay, I got my plan. I need to cut here, there, and whatever. If it goes really dark, then you go into the worst case scenario and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do if that happens. And you'll be amazed at how that really actually takes a lot of pressure off of you. And if you share this with your banker, you may actually have a friend on that side of the desk who can watch your business with you, knowing what you've done. So that's a good idea. When it comes to cutting costs, nobody likes to do this unless you're just really kind of don't have much of a personality. I hate cutting costs. It's easier to pile on costs and do more things, but to actually reduce the costs are tough. Some things that you can do is actually try to reduce your inventory hold. If you're a retailer, of course, you just need to find ways of actually carrying less inventory, but making sure that your deliveries are coming much faster. You may need to negotiate that with your supplier so that you don't hold an empty shelf, but just see if you can speed up their deliveries, but keep almost like a just-in-time inventory level. Another thing you can do is do a fire sale. Sell off the stuff that's just not moving. Just get it out there and just sell it. And just get that off your books. That could turn into cash that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Your workforce, we talked about reducing. We're going to talk a little bit more about firing and layoffs and pay reductions in a little bit, but you can actually use your workforce. We'll talk about strategic ways of doing that in just a second, so hold that thought. You can also amend your accounts receivable terms and ask for the money faster up front, or offer terms with a little bit of a price off if they will bring money to you faster. In your term section, you can do like a 110 or net 30 or 210 net 30, whatever you decide, just to get them to get the cash to you faster. And accounts payable terms is make sure that if you're running 45 to 60 days, you're only running 30 days in accounts payable, maybe you negotiate 45 days or 60 days. And that will keep cash in your bank account a little bit longer. You may also want to think about partial CFOs and COOs. If you are needing to shed some of your, of your top talent, sometimes there are a lot of partial administrators out there that you can hire that can work, maybe 50% of the time or 25% of the time, still get their services, but don't have to pay a full load for them. So that could be a way of actually dealing with it if you get to that level of cost cutting. You can create cash also by selling non-essential assets. If you got some cars that are in inventory that you really don't need, that you give into employees, go ahead and sell them. Also talk to your banker. Your banker could be your best friend during this process if you just talk a lot to them. Make sure you are anticipating their needs or what they need to know, and you're being aggressive about having that conversation with them. Be on top of the conversation as opposed to just hoping they don't call you asking about a restructuring of your financing package. Step in there and say, here's what I'm thinking, and get a line of credit extended. Make it bigger, make it longer, make the terms a little bit more favorable. But that's what you can do as well to get cash in the business. Any questions on that? Okay.
Lots of great information. Thank you.
Yeah. Know precisely what parts of your business are driving your profits. This is one of the most significant parts of your decision-making process. Where are my profits really coming from? And let me tell you, if you haven't done this, it's no fun to figure out. To sit down and it takes brain sweat. But it is a great investment of time. And just sit down and say, look at where all my business is coming from. Where's the one I'm making the most money off of? Run the reports, ask the questions. If you got a good accountant, CFO, or if you have a good controller, just get them involved in it and just ask these questions. And this is where you're going to need to invest in those really high profit areas. And then you look at everything else that's not really a part of the high profit parts of your business, and you be tough on it. And you try to cut as much of that as you possibly can. You ought to have a bias to cut. In other words, if I'm doing some really interesting little service ideas over here that really doesn't lead to revenue streams, do I really need it? Is it really driving my business at this point? And make those hard decisions and bias your cutting at the points that are not part of the profitable parts of your business. And that's the way a progressive thinker looks at cost of goods sold trimming. And it really is a big help. Any questions on that? You didn't know you get so much finance in this, did you? Hey, but it's part of it. I mean, recession's all about cash, so you got to know this stuff.
We love it.
Okay. Another thing about layoffs, furloughs, firings, part-time, pay reductions, the human side of our business. This is the part that breaks my heart every time. I remember having to lay off people in the past, and it's just not. I remember just throwing up in the bathroom before I actually met with an employee. I don't know if you guys have ever done that before. You got to fire somebody you really love. You wish you could keep them on, but the business is not allowing it, and you've got to make a tough call. I'm maybe too much of a softie or something, but it's hard for me. It is so hard for me, and I will go nine ways to Sunday trying to figure out how to keep people rather than letting people go. But recessions do give you that opportunity for two workforce strategies. You can weed out poor performers, the ones that are non-essential workers, the ones that are just not really lifting, really carrying their weight. In good times, it's so hard to really notice these people. They get lost in the shuffle. When the times are roaring and the customers are sending us, sales orders and all the great things are happening and cash is flowing, we usually just let the poor performers just kind of hang out, don't we? Mm-hmm. You may want to find this time to say, okay, this is my chance to clean house a bit. What's all that stuff in my organization? Those people that are just kind of not really doing much and not helping me really become profitable. And you may want to find out this is where I need to do the layoffs. It's also a time is to go deep on that. It's just really, if you feel like I really just need a different type of people to lead us into the future, this is a good time to upgrade your team too. So if you lay off some people, you may want to hire a couple of others back who are very strategic in what you're trying to accomplish in the future. This may give you that opportunity to think about that. I know that sounds cold and calloused, but just put that in your back pocket as you think about your business. It is very dangerous to use across-the-board workforce reduction as a primary cost-cutting method. You will absolutely destroy your business if you do that, because you're going to lose the hearts and minds of your people. You're going to lose great talent, and it's not very strategic. It is a reactionary way of doing it. So when you look at it, so when you do lay off sparingly, make sure the process feels fair, and it is fair. Communicate with transparency. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. We wish we could hold on. I'm working with a company right now. We made the decision to actually cut everyone's pay by 20% across the board. And what way we communicated that is that's going to save 5 jobs. If we all do this, 5 more people stay on board. And it was amazing how well that was received. And they just said, yeah, I don't want 5 people to get fired. I said, if we take a short-term pay cut, we can make that happen. We can save 5 jobs. So the way you actually serve it up could be a wonderful way. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any for instances on this?
I mean, I have just from the other side, I used to work with outplacement, in outplacement. And, a lot of times too, when people aren't feeling like they fit in, or if the layoffs are sort of a reason of, it's just not, we know, the company knows it's not a good fit, and the worker really truly knows it's not a good fit, but they're not going to say anything. A lot of times they've come to, when I've worked in the career planning part of it, they come in and see this as an opportunity. rather than
Yeah.
this is like I mean, obviously it's a humbling and awful and very, very difficult time, but it's also a chance to, rebrand and market to something that might be a better fit down the line.
Yes. That's a really good point.
Our company did something very, very similar to what you're describing here during the downturn of 2008, 2009, when our business was suffering. And we have a very human company. We value our trained and talented people. So we took across the board pay cut for the entire workforce from executive down. And the way we presented, we articulated, we're doing this because we don't want to lay off. We have a very stable company. We don't want to lose our talented people. And absolutely no regrets on that, because when we came out of 2009, came out of that, we were poised for growth, and we had, we had our people, we had our team, and we were able to really leverage that against our competition. And we've seen some really strong growth in the last 10 years.
Yeah. This actually does. It's like trimming a bush. You'll be amazed at how well your company can survive if you do this very strategically. Sounds like you guys did. That's great. Anybody else have a thought or comment, question? This is important stuff, and we should not take it lightly. And I wish we could go and just spend like 5 hours talking about this, but I'm hoping I'll give you enough for you to kind of just play with the ideas in your own mind. One thing that really helps your company, this is something if we've been an employer that has valued our employees, that we have done a lot for them, layoffs, pay reductions, furloughing feels like, to those people, that feels almost like they have been betrayed. Okay. The reason why, if you've been really good about involving your people, making them feel connected to your company, you're actually more vulnerable than those who have kind of treated their employees just kind of in a haphazard way, because they say, well, that's just expected with this company. But if you're actually a caring company, this is where we're most vulnerable, because a lot of people feel like they're being betrayed by a company. They said, I thought they loved us. I thought they were going to take care of us. And then we do something like this, and it really can upset the apple cart. We have to be really careful how we.
The only twist to that right now is that I do have a segment of our people who are like begging us to lay them off, because
really,
well, it's our production workforce, and the unemployment benefits are so rich right now because of these extra subsidies that I'm getting. This is an unusual situation, but there are a lot of them saying, why don't you just lay us off? Because their friends are making a lot of money sitting at home. And we have not shut down throughout the entire downturn. We're in manufacturing. So that's a new twist for this particular crisis. We got
exactly. That's a good point. And the payroll protection plan and also the unemployment benefits that are running right now do give us a weird reality. But you're right. I mean, that makes sense. But if you can use that and they feel happy about it and it doesn't upset your company, that's entirely up to you. And but that could be a strategy. Anybody else have a thought on that? Because that's really important.
Well, my thought would be, what do they then see? I mean, that's for the short term, but what, a worker who is getting these benefits, what do they see long term? If a company is like, we value you, we want to, but they're able to get benefits, unemployment benefits that give them more money. However, once this thing turns around, are they going to find that stability somewhere else? Are they going to find that stability in a job somewhere else? So that would be my question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it's the dynamic that you fight in. Now, my more highly skilled jobs,
right?
They're not asking to be laid off.
Right.
They understand, but when we have more of our rote, more repetitious assembly level, entry level, they're very short-sighted. It's always the perspective for them, and they're looking at what can I get today and next week. They're not looking at retirement or stability.
They're short-term thinkers at this point, and so it's probably not going to upset your culture as much with those kinds of layoffs if you need to. And I'm not trying to say that for any political reasons, just from a business management standpoint. So, I mean, I could think about it from a cultural standpoint, whether I like that idea or not. And that's a whole different discussion.
Mhm.
But as a manager of a business, you just got to deal with the realities that are in front of you. Let's move on to another thought real quick. Should I drop my prices in a recession? This is a temptation. This is a temptation. Let me give you some information that I have, and it's going to be different for everybody. So I'm just going to lay out a wide understanding of what happens with pricing, and then let you say, is this real for me or is it different for me? The best thing to do is that you can actually take what we call a segmented approach. And what that means is that there are certain types of your customers who are buying from you for different reasons. And so you can actually segment your customers into different groups. And some people may be totally happy if you package theirs into a service and a product combo, and they'll pay extra money for that. And some people say, just give me the absolute baseline, functionality of this, and you can actually price that at a different level. So it gives you an opportunity to really think through this. And again, I would do the whole, customer empathy mapping to find out what this is all about, and look at each one's, can I segment the market into smaller groups and do a more value-based approach? Some people may want a cost reduction, some may not. I think it was kind of interesting that the oil companies dropped prices of gasoline when there was very little demand. They really didn't need to. We would have bought it from them anyway, and because our driving was different. It was kind of interesting that the whole industry just kind of got it backwards. I know they're doing it for competitive reasons, but they really threw a lot of money away because they did not stimulate demand at all with their price reductions. Avoid price leakage. You giving away free shipping or longer payment terms or free customer service. All these things will have a rubber band effect. They're great for right now. They may give you a couple little leverage points, but realize that it's hard to pull them back once you get them out, once you start floating those out there. How many of you are willing to give up free shipping with Zappos and all that right now? If they were to say, you got to start paying for shipping. They probably see a huge demand drop. So you got to think about when you give up these kinds of what we call price leakage, extras, what's going to happen afterwards? And can I rubber band back to it, or am I going to be stuck with this? And more than likely, you'll find yourself being stuck. There is an idea called dynamic pricing, and that's for the really big guys. I don't know if we got anybody who's got like a major, SKU count that they're trying to sell. They're doing a lot, thousands of different items, thousands of different customers. But you can do dynamic price. That's exactly what Amazon does. That's exactly what the airlines do. Is that they price based upon the immediate demand of the day. That's why you can buy a airline ticket from Delta on Tuesday, and it's this, and you buy it on Thursday, it's that. It's all about dynamic pricing. There are algorithms you can build. We won't go into that. I assume that most of us that's a little bit above our business, but if you are curious about it and want to talk about it with me separately, we can. There's another really cool thing that you need to know about pricing. It's called hedonic value adaptation. I'm going to give you a little scenario. Imagine, and it's right before lunch, I'm doing something very cruel to you by showing you a nice hamburger right before lunchtime. Now everybody's going to want to go, I need some French fries, I need some onion rings. I'm already thinking that just by looking at it. But what I want to tell you about this is that, say that you've got this place you want to go to. They make amazing hamburgers. They charge you $10.99 for a drink, a hamburger, and onion rings. And so you go to that place and, boy, I said, I'm in the mood for a really good hamburger from this place. And you're willing to pay $10.99. But when you walk in, they have a big sign. They've marked it down to $5.99. The exact same thing you've always bought from them. And you look in there, are you happy or you're sad?
That makes me sad.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be nice. It's something I really wanted, and they actually should give me $5 off.
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy.
It does make you wonder, though.
Yeah, but it makes me wonder, like, how they're doing and
where's that meat from?
It's just, it's all special. Yeah. Well, Matt, exactly. But imagine you go a month later, and you go to the same place, and the hamburger was delicious at the $5.99 price the time before. You come back the next time, and it's at $5.99 again. Are you happy? Are you sad?
Mm.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of happy. It's $5.99. This is great.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, especially a Beyond Meat burger.
Yeah, Exactly. So, you enjoy it, and it's just as delicious as it's always been. You got it for $5.95. You go a third time a month later, and you go to the same place, and you look at it, and they still have it on special for $5.99. Are you happy or are you sad? I said, I'm probably pretty happy. You go a fourth time, and it's still at $5.99. You're feeling pretty good. Wow, that's okay. And then you go in a fifth time, and it's back to $10.99.
You're PO'd.
Yes. What happened? It's the exact same sandwich. It's the exact same onion rings, the same deliciousness I've always had, but now they raise the price back to $10.99, and now I'm ticked.
Yeah.
I'm upset. I think I'm being ripped off. Why I tell you that is that's what we call that hedonic or value adaptation. When you start lowering your prices of your products and services, this is what's happening. Every time you lower it, you're resetting the value of that product. Really important to watch. And in recessions, we get tempted just to drop prices. And sometimes prices just don't need to be dropped during this time, because one thing we have to keep in mind is that most of business prices become what we call inelastic in an economic downturn. You can raise the price by $1 or drop the price by $1, and very little volume will increase or decrease. Like I was talking about the oil companies. They dropped their prices down to almost nothing. And they thought that would improve and get us to buy more oil. We didn't. We actually, our volume did not increase that much because we just weren't going anywhere. It became very inelastic, and they lost a lot of money because we were not turned on or turned off by that. It just wasn't a need. So be careful when you just say, let's drop prices to increase our business. Sometimes that's the absolute worst thing you can do. But there's times that price reductions can work. If you got a product that really makes sense for people in the COVID crisis, and it just makes sense for them. If you're in toilet paper and you're trying to compete to get back on the shelf, man, maybe you can do something.
Steve, I have a question, this is going to sort of Brittany's question too. She's talking about donations and nonprofit donations. A lot of nonprofits haven't been able to, have their like a dinner or, an event that's usually a big fundraiser for them. And so they're kind of wondering, it's very hard for them to say, hey, remember that event that you really liked? Well, we're not able to put that on this year, but we actually still need that money in order to run. How do you kind of work through that and
virtual events,
right? Have a virtual event or something like that. I know, like Safe Harbor has done some things. I've gotten information on that, and they've had more. They've actually had to move into hotels because they can't have everybody in the same house. So, their costs have actually increased in that way. So anyway, I'm just wondering, how does that work?
Right.
I wish I could give you a really good, solid advice on that. I haven't really done a lot of deep thinking on that, mostly because my clients haven't asked me to, and my apologies for not knowing. But I'm willing to look that up and talk to some people about that. But that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think the only thing I can think of right now is just that the reason why you're asking for money is because of the cause itself and not for the event. Use the event just to get. And I think if you still stay focused on the big picture and make your communications about the big picture and not about the event, that may be helpful. I don't have any data to support whether that will work or not. That's just my first guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But okay, I wish I had more for you. I apologize. Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions on this? Oh, another thing I want to mention too on this slide real quick is that when you drop your price, if you don't change your volume and you do a 1% price drop, for most companies, the average company in America would lose 12.5% in profitability. So you think just a price drop's no big deal, but actually it kills your profitability. And so be aware of that. And the reason why that number is there is because of all the SG&A and the depreciation amortization I put on my business, that 1% drop will actually turn into a negative 12.5% hit on my profitability. So be very careful and just monkeying with price. Make sure that you will increase volume significantly if you do a price drop. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, let's move quickly. We got, oh man, I just put too much in this.
All right.
My apologies. I hope this has been helpful.
Yes.
Let's talk a little about capitalizing at the time. One thing I think is really important for us as leaders is to, if you feel like your team's just kind of stalling out and just kind of losing its edge during this, which is very easy to happen. One thing you got to do is see if you can re-stoke what we call the founder's mentality, or why we're in business to begin with. Why did we establish our business? And use that as a way of kind of building your team back into momentum to coming out of the recession. So you remember why we got into all this, guys. We were going to change the world. We're going to make grocery store shopping so much better. And let's really figure out what that founder's mentality is and preach it. Even create, in my opinion, you ought to create some kind of even a little bit of a mythology around it and tell the story. And it'd be amazing how that picks up people. And so that's a great little tip for leadership. This is the advice I got from a NASCAR driver. He says, when you go into a turn, you apply the brakes first, you get your ideal racing line, you accelerate out of the turn. And that's really what we're talking about with strategize, I forgot about strategize, stabilize, and capitalize. Applying the brakes is a stabilization. Just get our cuffs way down, find my ideal racing line. That's my strategy. I'm going to be a progressive company. And accelerate out of the turns. I'm getting myself ready. So when that is, we're ready to hit the gas coming out of the turn with our wheels pointed forward and ready to make an acceleration. That's really why I chose this analogy to talk about what we're talking about today. So remember that. Just think about yourself. If you're driving a really fast car around a corner, that's exactly the strategy that a good race driver does. Recession, you should think about as opportunity. You need to reframe the reality for yourself first, and also for your people. Relish the challenge, find the fun in it. We get a chance to rethink our business and find new ways of actually creating value. It's the perfect time to make a strategic move. It's not business as usual. We've got to see if there are incredible strategic turns to make and to really turn into almost like a mission or some kind of a incredible quest that you and your team are going on. You'll find out you'll be able to keep your team really engaged and help them with the acceleration. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, but he didn't, I modernize it, so I changed a couple words in it. Only a racer knows why a dog sticks his head out of a window. You should have that kind of feeling about what you're doing. We're doing something fun. This is crazy. We're going to really make this thing happen. So leading through a downturn, you should communicate with incredible transparency and earnestness and caring, a lot of empathy. How do we make decisions? We actually put the customer right in the middle of everything we say and say, what are we doing to make their lives better, and cut out everything that's not. And then how do I manage my own mental health? You have anxieties. We have anxieties. Make sure you're managing those. I just downloaded the Calm app on my phone. I like that thing. It gives me a chance to stop every once in a while and just, because I build up a lot of energy and a lot of anxiety through the day, as I know you do as well. But find ways of actually doing that. Because what happens, I'm moving quickly because I want to get a couple things in front of you before we go. It's very easy to become what we call a self-focused boss. It's a very natural tendency at times like this. You're stressed. You're trying to change things. You're trying to make things better. And your team's got plenty of anxiety on their own. You're just piling on your anxieties on top of them. You need to be intentional about how you deal with them. You look at it from their point of view. That's emotional intelligence. And because if you're starting to put a lot of pressure on your employees to make the changes and all this kind of stuff, and you're all burning up inside and a lot of anxiety is being poured out, you're just doubling their anxiety. They're taking your anxiety on plus their own. You need to step back and figure out, how can I stop this from happening? Because it's very easy as a leader to feel entitled and become autocratic at times like this, because you got to make it all happen. You got to get people moving. You got to get people all lined up. And you turn out to be a very boorish person. You'll find out that'll kill your team. I see this way too often. It's really tragic to see. Strategies is just try to make things predictable. Bring it down to simple things. Simple wins, short-term wins. Just try to make the world predictable for them. Give them a chance to take uncertainty and turn it into some kind of a reasonable certainty. Show understanding and secure understanding. Make sure when you're talking that they're getting what you're saying. And you show understanding when they're talking, you make sure you listen. That's all about emotional intelligence. Grant control. Give them opportunities to control their own world. Right now, they feel like their world's out of control. Find ways of letting your people take some kind of modest control over things that are happening inside the business. And always express sympathy. Show them that you're listening, that you feel you feel their feels, you're with them. You'll be amazed at how much that's going to keep your team energized and pushing forward. And I know it's against our natural tendencies as people, because we're nervous and we're frustrated and we don't want our business to falter. But be careful with that, because this is a tough thing to do. And if you are in a job where you're not a leader, you also got to have a strategy on how to keep yourself from being laid off if you don't want to be laid off. And think very proactively about, act like a survivor, like you're going to be there because you're confident, you're cheerful, you're saying, yeah, we can do this. I want to help you out. And you have this kind of a cheerleading aspect during this process. You'll be amazed at how your bosses will notice. Keep your eye on the future. Bring the customer into your business and talk about your customer, what they need and what we can do to make their lives better. Wear multiple hats. If you can do other things in the business, say, hey, I can help with that. I can go for a week and help solve that problem or whatever. Add responsibilities. Empathize with your boss, which is kind of weird for us to say. Bosses should be about us. We should also be about our bosses, because they're the ones that are going to make a decision who they're going to lay off next. Know that they're going through a tough time. Your boss hates to do what he's having to do or she's having to do. And be that person who unites and inspires, not the person who's constantly complaining or always belly aching, because that will absolutely kill your stock value with other people. Okay, I'm about to run out of time. I probably can't get into this.
Yeah, I mean, in sort of the vein of respecting everybody's time, we, if you have to leave at 12, we understand. I'd love for Steve to kind of continue, Steve, if you want. And if you have any questions, you can always send them to me at the web. I'll just go ahead and enter my email here. This conversation might be one where we can, also have some emails back and forth as well. So, but yeah, Steve, I'd say if it's okay with Nan and okay with everybody to just go ahead and move ahead. We have, gone over a little bit, but we want to respect your time too. If you have to leave, we are recording this, so I'll send you the recording as well. So,
and I have about 5 more minutes of conversation straight up if anybody wants to listen to that. But if you don't, I totally get it, because everybody's got really tight time schedule.
Gotcha.
All right. So you will not offend us if you have to bow out.
Right.
I don't want. All right. Normal business cycles. We can prepare for the next recession. We're going to have them again. Okay. There's this idea of called fortress balance sheet. And that's where you need to really make sure you have strong liquidity and cash positions. If that's something that you're not familiar with, it's a good thing to talk with your CFO or your controller. Managing your debt levels. We find out that companies that have not too much debt do really well. People that have too little debt actually can hurt themselves as well. So we'll call it the Goldilocks. It's just the right amount of debt. And that really takes a good CFO or a good accountant to help you decide what that level of debt is going into recession. But make sure you talk about that. Push your debt maturities well into the future. Have long-term debt as opposed to everything in a line of credit, which some people do. They just load up a line of credit with everything, purchasing cars and office equipment, put it into a long-term debt instrument, much better for you for the recession. And do these things while things are good. And also while things are good, still build recession scenarios. Remember those 3 scenarios we talked about? That's good practice even outside of a normal, outside of a recession, to do that strategically a couple times a year. Say, where are we? What happens if we lost 10% of our business? The reason why I like that so much is it makes you ask hard questions. What really works for me? And always, always, always filter every decision you make from the customer's point of view. That's where you should start. with that empathy of being able to say, okay, what's their world like? What are they hoping to get out of the products and services that we are offering? How can I make it better for them? That will keep you much more secure in a recession. And we find out that the prepared businesses do much better during and after recession. That pink line shows you how much the prepared companies do over the ones that are unprepared for the recession. And you see that's the reason, that's enough of an argument that you should still have a rainy day scenario being thought through constantly, even when the skies are bright and sunny in your business. You just see the differences is just astounding when it comes to actually post-recession health. Remember, never run out of cash. Yeah, that just ruins any business. I don't care how good your product or your services is. If you don't have cash, forget it. So that's your primary concern during a recession and even post-recession. So anyhow, those are my thoughts. I hope they were helpful. I just want to say thank you. This has been a fun conversation for me to have with you. It was great for my own thinking as I'm thinking about businesses, my business itself, and also for the businesses of my clients. And any questions or anybody have a comment?
I
Wow.
am blown away. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. I've learned so much, and I'm grateful
Oh, good.
for you, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I really want to stress that, for people who are having to make these tough decisions is to really, really, really take care of yourself.
Yep.
Because, it all starts with you. And, if you're not in, I also want to own that these times are so different and can be traumatic for a lot of people. So I want to, I want you I want to normalize that, but I also want to say, that means be more compassionate with yourself. Because you've got to have that compassion for yourself and before you can start to make some of these tough decisions that you have to make. So.
Absolutely. Good point.
I'd like to add in, when things are going great, it doesn't really drive innovation. So when you have to find another path, surround yourself with people who don't think like you, who you think are smart, and are open to discussion, and just keep thinking about things, and you'll make some breakthroughs.
I think we've had to be more open-minded than ever during this
Yep.
time. And as a creative, it's fun for me because I'm always working, always brainstorming, always doing something to get to the next level. Working in entertainment, that's just how we live. We're trying to be thinking about the next video, thinking about the next big idea. That's kind of always our goal. And that's kind of where the Outstanding Youth Awards nonprofit was birthed from, my children's books and from all the other things that I've done. So you're right. Times like this really show you what you're made of, not just what your business is made of, but like internally, mentally, physically, emotionally, who are we as people? Like what can we do to survive during these crazy moments? And I think I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about my kids that I've been counseling. Virtually being able to lay your eyes on people is huge because kids are just like, oh my gosh, there's a face in the computer. And